Hello everybody and welcome back once again to the Resident Evil Resistance Honest Q&A. It's part 5, we've got more questions. I've said it for the last 2 parts, I don't think I'm going to get through them all this episode. We could have at least one more after this. It's crazy how much I've been able to milk this series, but hey, while you guys still have any sort of fun with it, we will keep it ticking. So today we will be just doing the usual. I'll be picking out questions, answering as many as I can. We'll see what ones are a bit touchy. We'll see which ones are your standard questions and which ones rip into me and make me look like an idiot. So hey, it's back again. I'm acting like it's been gone a year. It's been like 3 days, Nick. Anyway, here we go. Let's start again. And we'll start with an interesting one from Jill Sandwich, which is, who is the most hard-headed / stubborn human you've had to deal with? Now, by that, I assume you don't mean in my entire life. And if you did, then I'm not going to name my old science teacher. He was very stubborn in school. But instead, in a resistance sense, there is quite a few. Now, stubborn isn't always a bad thing. I think a lot of the really sweaty players are stubborn, and in a way that's a good thing. You don't want to be, just pushed around or made to do something. So in some cases, let's take Adrian. He's stubborn. I've seen times where he's been asked to go on the long side in Bemusement, or the short side in Bemusement, sorry, with Tyrone, and he's insisted he goes on the long side, and in general he's a stubborn player, but he's also a great player. So yeah, definitely up there though. French Reaper is quite similar. He's very, very stubborn with his play style, his build, but it gets him results, and that's fair enough. Other examples of stubbornness include Adolfo Ramos, I think, is up there. It's not necessarily that his gameplay is stubborn, but just his general attitude. Now, I don't mind the guy. He's been chill with me for the most part, but at the same time, if you don't join his invite immediately, he will take it personally sometimes, and it's you can explain to him that you're in a game or doing this and that, and it still doesn't come through to him. So that is a big example of his stubbornness. And then we've got many different examples of stubbornness here, actually, because Genji, or Genke, as some people might recognize it more from how his name is spelt, he is ridiculously stubborn when it comes to his survivor builds and when it comes to looting the map for credits. We'll have all the keys, and Genji will still be in the far corner in Casino rooting for more ammo, more spares. You've got to pick up everything when you're playing with him. And don't get me wrong, it's amusing in some ways, but in others, a little bit much. It's fine, just leave the ammo at the side, Genji. It's not going to kill you. Another example would be, I've taken, 4 minutes to mention him this episode? Mike. Mike is very stubborn. This man never, ever buys a gun on Tyrone, even against gun builds. This man, for 2 years, would not buy a Raiden on Becca if his life depended on it. You could literally be in a life or death situation, and if the terms and conditions were, hey Mike, buy a Raiden and Nick won't fall off a skyscraper, then he'd be like, don't care, I'm not getting a Raiden. And the same goes for the Matilda as well. So yeah, Mike is very stubborn with his weapon choices, and just that type of thing in general. But as always, Mike is a good lad, and yeah, Just he should have bought a Raiden about 2 years earlier than he did. And then another example, I feel like I could list them off all day, to be honest. Bobby Bell. This guy was like, I don't know, in the second main team I was in, it was me, Ricky Boy Leeds, him, and True Evil. And we teamed up most days for a couple of months, and it was all good and fun, but good grief, he would not take any sort of constructive criticism if it hit him in the face. Like, it wouldn't even need to be constructive criticism. It would just be, hey, Bobby, can Nick use January? Like, I remember True Evil saying, can Nick use Jan this match? He's better. And then Bobby Bell was like, no, we need malware. It's like, and he wouldn't budge. I didn't care either way. I was just leveling up my characters, but this man was like a malware enthusiast. And again, thinking about Jan's, Symphonic Phantom was also stubborn. I was reminded the other day, or rather told, that Symphonic Phantom used camera lockdown as his fever skill, and even when he was told that masterminds could bypass the fever skill, you know, by holding, what is it, L2 and square to centralize the camera, something like that, I can't remember. Yeah, but that can bypass that fever skill from Jan, and he denied it. He said it's the best skill, it hard counters Terminal Spencer, and it's great. And it's like, well, no, it literally doesn't work. But Symphonic Phantom didn't take it into account. And yeah, I think that will do us for stubborn people for now. It's definitely a long list and many different ways of stubbornness. It's funny because like, I'd say I'm stubborn in real life, but when it comes to resistance, I'm pretty flexible. So yeah. Anyway, next question is a banger. It's only taken 7 minutes for my bloody pocket to be mentioned, and that's because Tacitus Kilgore has asked, so, you're travelling with your fave boy, that's her wording, with your fave boy Raccoon in your pocket. What's your first stop? Maybe Paris or somewhere more tropical? Now, I think if me and Rack were going about our business, that sounds really bad, but if he was in my pocket, doesn't sound much better, I think I'd take him to San Diego, actually. I've seen their zoo have rave reviews many a time, and you know, I want to take Raccoon to go and see a raccoon. Be a bit weird if San Diego Zoo doesn't have a raccoon now, but in that case, we can still go on the waterfront. We can still go to the Herb and Wood restaurant for some fine dining. I definitely didn't just Google the best restaurant in San Diego and find Herb and Wood, by the way. So, yeah. Me and Raccoon, we go to California, probably bump into Brandon on the way. Brandon would probably end up in, well, no, I'd end up in Brandon's pocket. And yeah, otherwise, I don't know. I think the Caribbean would be a good place for me and Rack. Chilling, taking the edge off of things. No Terminal Spencer matches to worry about. It'd be all good. Treat him to some coconuts. And yeah, happy life. Next up is Winchester, who asks, did you ever play Survivor with Dominic and Peppenkek? Yes. Ex Nihilo Nihilum asks, what could make the community better for newcomers? Now, obviously, in a game sense, we know what Capcom could have done to make the game more accessible for the babies. Like, yeah, but in terms of the community, I don't know, I think there just needed to be a level of leeway from people, a level of good sportsmanship, and that was never going to happen. People want to rank up their masterminds, people want to have as many matches as they can in a row. Survivor mains, if they have a baby on their team, you know, they know they're going to play with a bad / inexperienced player, and it's not worth the effort in solo queue or even in duo or trio. A baby can throw a match. So I get why people have never been more charming towards the low rank players, because I get it. It's just the life and nature of how resistance works. Like, people are going to be selfish and think about either their own ranks or their own team. So yeah, but just in cases like when a baby is lost on the map, like, don't go and farm the baby. Use your zombie, guide him back to spawn, something little like that. I'm not asking to give them a free win, but just a level of leniency. Like, one of my favourite matches was when I let 4 babies try and win on Bemusement without me doing anything, and they still timed out. But it was just a fun match for them to experience, and then the Tyrone afterwards messaged me and, said GG. So he appreciated it. Other people have. And, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not a saint either. I've squashed many babies in 30 seconds because I just can't be bothered. Some evenings I just want to rank up my Nikolai by 10 ranks and goop and gun everyone. That's just how it is. But yeah, if there was more of a concerted effort just to be that little bit more, lenient to babies, just give them a little guiding path, then yeah, it would be a little bit more encouraging for them. And same with, it's not all on the masterminds. Like, teammates of babies in solo queue should also, be a bit more patient. But at the same time, I don't blame them either, because sometimes you can say this way to a baby for 10 minutes and they still won't follow you. So that's where frustrations are justified, and sadly why babies were never going to, get the breathing space they need to be good at the game for long enough. So yeah, it is what it is, basically. Exnahilo then asks, how do you see Resistance if it was still being updated since November 2020? I mean, it's a really interesting one to think about, but at the same time, I think a lot of people are of the opinion that this needs changing, that needs changing. To be honest, I don't think the game is in a bad state. Maybe I'm just used to the bad builds now. Maybe I'm used to facing Trap Alex and Infection Alex. And I know those builds are still, like, I mean, I don't mean just Alex's builds. I mean, Nikolai and Terminal Spencer, all that stuff. I know some of them just aren't fun to face. And maybe I'm just used to that over time. But at the same time, I feel like if we still had consistent updates, the game would be even more, like, imbalanced and needing more fixed. Because, I'm not being funny, when they did update the game, every month people would get triggered from either side. Like, when they nerfed zombie health, when they made this and that viable and then nerfed other things, when new skills came in for survivors and they were broken, and then other skills weren't broken and were nerfed too much. Like, don't get me wrong, I would have loved if the game was still being updated, but I feel like if it was still like once a month, then it wouldn't be beneficial to the game's stability. I think an update every few months, that can mean whatever you want, 3, 4, 5, something like that, just to keep the game ticking over would be great. Keep it fresh, give it a coat of paint, but there needs to be a balance in the updates. If not, it's just too volatile and unpredictable. So yeah, it would be interesting. I'm sure we'd have loads of different cards, skills, abilities, and who knows? The game could be much, much, much healthier for builds and balance than it is now. But at the same time, yeah, it is what it is. And I also don't think it would have helped the game's lifespan. The game was small anyway. I don't think it would have brought people back. A small section, yes, but once people dip out of a game like Resistance, I don't think they come back long term. They come back, don't get me wrong, but that's more the hardcore players that do. In terms of casuals, I just don't think there was enough. There was too many issues with the game in terms of how people saw it, with how the RE3 remake got a bad reputation and Resistance as a result, and so on and so forth. So I still think Resistance would have died. I think it did really well to have as big a player base, or as stable a player base as it did for that long. And yeah, it just is an interesting thought, but still. And talking about that, X then asks, do I think Resistance might die one day? Or will people just continue to consider the game in a competitive way, even though we know the golden age is gone? I mean, look, these games never fully die. All you need at the end of the day is one mastermind and 4 survivors, and you can have a game. And while there's still... There only needs to be, 100 European players playing the game, and that's still enough for potentially an hour or two's worth of entertainment every day. You really don't need many players to have a good Resistance session. As long as they have played the game a decent amount, it can always be a competitive match. But, yeah, obviously the game is very sparse in comparison to what it once was. But will it die? No. Too many veterans do return here and there to make it that way. I've started playing again in the last few days. It's easy to pick up, go back to every once in a while and have fun with, and some people genuinely just will not stop playing it, so there'll always be some form of life support for it. X then asks, what is the more cancer build, Nikolai or Terminal Spencer? Now, I think in general it's Terminal Spencer. It's a very static build, just shields. It feels hard to... You can't interact with it much, especially as a more casual player. You're just going to be looking up and staring at cams. Standing on the spot as well, because he'll just be shielded and time stalling. And then Nikolai's cancer because he's capable of completely blowing you out of the water and ending a match within a minute. So, yeah, I don't know. I consider Nikolai good, really good as a competitive mastermind. I enjoy his style of play. I think that's what Resistance should be at the highest level. Fast reactions, one-shots, high-paced gameplay. Obviously, it'd be nice if zombies were viable, but that would be another story. But, yeah, Terminal Spencer it's not engaging enough. Players will, get very frustrated about it, and rightly so. And I say this as someone who's played Terminal Spencer a lot, so, yeah. I don't know. Nikolai, to me, the player still needs to be at least somewhat good, whereas with Terminal Spencer doesn't have as high a ceiling as a good Nikolai, but if you're against any team without USBs in solo queue, you should not lose that match. And that's just not a good way for the game to be. So, Terminal Spencer, it's not as flexible, it doesn't offer as much fun. I'll pick that. And I'll leave one of X's questions till next time. Daryl Werder asks, did I get my PSN card? No. No, Mutated Nemi gave Kara one. None of us lot got any. And it's still the biggest robbery in Resistance history, and I'm very sad. On a serious note, though, I was reminded about one time where I was meant to give a prize to someone on Crash Team Racing, and I forgot to ever give it to them. So maybe that's a bit of karma. Maybe Mutated Nemi was a secret Crash Team Racing player and he knew. There you go, I can't complain. Next up, we have Temp776193 on PSN who asks, do I think Nikolai killed the game? No, I don't. I think he accelerated the death of the game by a good amount, but the game never had big enough numbers as the player base for anything specific that was added to kill it. Don't get me wrong, it's prevented players staying longer, but the game was never gonna be like mainstream. It was fun, it was accessible in some ways and not accessible in many others. And although I think Nikolai, the way they released him was very bad with the gun damage and stuff, and yeah, also the lack of new stuff they added with him. I remember on Swingpoint's stream when Nikolai dropped, people thought we were getting parasites, and then we didn't, and it was just guns, guns, guns. So I understand why you asked the question, and it's definitely valid, but I don't think Resistance died purely through one thing being added to the game or one thing not changing. It's just, yeah, the game still had a healthy player base for a long time, but it's a player base that had a ceiling as well. That's just what the game is. What next? Kai Hiratari asks me what my thoughts were playing with him and talking to him. I mean, Kai, I like these questions the most. Directly ask me about yourself. That's great to me. I like that. It's open, and luckily for you, or not luckily, you probably don't give a shit if I don't think you're that great, but no, you're one of my very favourite people on Resistance, to be honest. I always got on with you. It was always nice as well when I was starting to play with people like the best players and I was like a little bit unsure of how to relate with them once or twice in the first couple of parties I joined. So when you were there, it was always nice to, have a fellow Brit around, and again, you're quite similar to me as well. Chilled, laid back, can take a loss. Yeah, you're just a nice guy to be around. You're a very good player. And it was always a pleasure to play with you. And I honestly wish we did even more. So, yeah, great guy. Glad I knew you. And thanks for checking out the last couple of Q&As. Next up, we'll take one of Night of Ren's questions, because him and Jill Sandwich have asked multiple ones, so I'll have to save some of those for next time, but I'll do at least one of Night of Ren's here, and we will go with... we'll do two. Night of Ren asks, what's the one or two things that frustrated me most facing Nikolai in Customs? To be honest, I think it would be... That's a good question, actually. It's a very standard question, but it's an interesting one nevertheless. Because I'm not just going to say, oh, it's facing Nikolai. That's the frustrating thing, because that's a cop-out. I don't know. I think, to be honest, it would be the lack of accountability from teammates sometimes. People were very quick to lose patience against Nikolai if, it was a bad Area 1. Very easy to get frustrated, and I'm not talking about specific names here. It happened with most people in most Nikolai customs. Even I got frustrated in them and, lost my patience, as in, I'd make mistakes, not lost my patience as in I'd shout at people. But, yeah, I think people are so fixated on not making mistakes against Nikolai that when there is a death that happens, that it's very easy for everything to spiral out of control. So, yeah, I think if more people accepted that dying against a Nikolai is going to happen, because sometimes, you know, if a Nikolai has shield goop machine gun, and they goop you at the right moment, or even just recover a camera that's been blown out already, there's not much you can do. And yeah, but don't get me wrong, that combination as well is frustrating. But to be honest, the thing that frustrated me most about facing Nikolai's in customs would, funnily enough, not even be Nikolai. It would just be, yeah, me and teammates panicking more than anything, when afterwards, if you watched the match back, you'd be like, why did we do that play? Why did we panic? It's easy to say in the moment, because it's chaotic, but yeah, it would just have gone better sometimes if it was a bit more chill. And then, well, Ren actually also asks, is there a part of me that was upset with him for rage quitting against Lin after 10 losses in a row? No, actually, I wasn't. During that session, just everything went wrong. I think we got a couple of wins in there, but we lost so many. And I remember the second that you did quit, I think it was Bam who said, oh, did Ren get disconnected? And I literally just said, no, I'm pretty sure he just rage quit because he died, and I honestly don't blame him, because it's just not been going our way. So sometimes those sessions happen and you just want to call it a day, and I get it, so yeah. And then I will answer Bridget's question, which is, what's one negative that I took from being part of this community? Oh boy, to be honest, I think it's just the amount of people who had, like, main character syndrome. Like, so many people had an overinflated level of self-importance, and, like, although it helped give people and the game personality, like, you know, if you saw somebody's name on the loading screen as Mastermind, you'd be like, oh, it's this toxic guy, or this guy who dances, or this guy who spams voice lines, or whatever. Like, it's great there's personality, but at the same time, so many people made it life and death. Like, the drama, the tension, the toxicity and the conflict, it all came, most of it, because there just wasn't enough humility. Like, so many arguments would be, oh, they did that first. And it's like, both of them have probably cheated, but it would be like, no, he duped first, or he did this, or he did that. And it's like, who cares? If they're a cheater, just let people know they're a cheater, and then they'll probably block them. But if you're going to argue and try and expose people, and everybody gets so personal and whatever, it's tiring. Like, don't get me wrong, there were moments in my resistance period where I've got annoyed sometimes, and I've even sent annoying messages like, well done on that toxic build, or this and that. But one thing I can be proud of is that I didn't get stuck in having a massive ego in the game. Like, just the amount of people who felt the need to say that, you know, they were the best this and that, and not even in, like, an interesting way. If people said they thought they were the best Jan, and it was all good and light-hearted, that's great. But when people were genuinely getting passionately debating about it, it's like, guys, we're just playing a nice, unique game here. Can we just enjoy it? And I know that's unrealistic, but yeah, I don't know. I've just never played an online game before, and never been in a community where I've just seen such a level of self-importance and a need to get self-validation, as in this one. Like, even really good masterminds would be like, am I the best Nikolai? And want that validation from people, or they'd just be like, I'm the best Nikolai. And so many people are guilty of it. So, yeah, I don't know. I just think it made the game very unsavory at times, and it could have been handled better. It made some people seem very inaccessible, like you felt that they thought they were on a pedestal. And yeah, the community could have been a bit more inclusive, and everybody could have got along if there was just a level of, yeah, I'll play with whoever, or yeah, I'll try and not be frustrated at this person if they make a mistake. You'll try and teach them instead. But again, that's just my opinion. Everybody's different, and it's fair to expect people to be different, but it is what it is. And then Bridget also asks, what's one positive I take from the community? Now, while there was a level of people who had self-importance, there also was a great amount of genuinely lovely people from all corners of the world. And even though I said I'd never seen a community that needs such a level of ego stroking, I've also never seen a community with such a variation of fun, vibrant people where I could have serious and unserious matches with, and just how a session of matches could feel different just by having one different person in a voice chat or in a team. Like, that is where Resistance's personality was shown off in a good light, and it's always that hard balance, because if people didn't show their personality off, then the game would be boring, everything would feel the same. But yeah, there just needed to be a middle ground. But again, I can confirm I've met lots of lovely people on this game, and I'm very happy to have been part of it. And I think I'll end with one more. Ooh, what could I go with? So yeah, we are going to have another part. Good amount of questions left over. Let's go with one more from one more from Jill Sandwich, and it's, how do I feel about my Q&As getting memed on? I welcome it. I think it's hilarious that people talk about it and get triggered about it and wonder about it. And don't get me wrong, I don't mean hilarious as in, oh, I've insulted you, why are you crying? It's like, no, if I've been a dickhead, I'll admit it. Like, for example, in, what was it, 2 episodes ago, I mentioned a player who would send me certain messages, and they were awkward for me, but I shouldn't have said their name. I should have just said the messages, but just said it was a girl who sent me these messages. So, you know, I've made mistakes as well during this series of videos, but yeah, if I've made a mistake at any point, I'll gladly apologize to people or talk it through with them. But in terms of people who just, you know, think it's funny or meme about it, that's great. You know, it still gives it more attention. And at the end of the day, these Q&As aren't meant to be serious. I mean, they're honest and open, but they're not meant to be like, my opinion's not the be-all and end-all on Resistance. I mean, everyone knows that anyway, but like, if you meme about it and think it's a lot of rubbish, that's power to you. Like, I know Bridget said that she was at work and she was pissing herself laughing at one of the Q&As because of just how, like, deadpan I was and the things I was saying. And other people find it genuinely interesting and enjoy listening to them. Like, was it Doc Febron last episode said, you know, that he just genuinely enjoys listening. So, yeah, people enjoy it in different ways. Some people don't enjoy it, and they're right to do so as well. But while there's questions, there will be answers given. And on that note, please leave more questions below. We've got about maybe 6, I think, at the moment. 6 more I've got to answer. Well, actually, I do have a couple that I was given on Twitch earlier today as well by Kronos and Xbox Clown, but I was going to answer them today, but Kronos's one is related to the community again, so I've talked a lot about that today, and Xbox Clowns is just a nice question that I'd like to answer next time, so yeah, that will do. Thank you for listening as always. You've all been stars for taking part. Hopefully ask more questions, as in not me asking questions, but you guys. If you want to hear my opinion about you, if you want to hear my opinion about how bad I am at Tyrone, blah blah blah, that usual easy target, or whatever else, leave them below. I'll see you again in a few days for the next part, and have a lovely day in the meantime. Or lovely days. Yeah. Later.